Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Cairo today, trying to salvage efforts for that ceasefire in Gaza. Those efforts, of course, made even more complicated by the wave of deadly blasts on Tuesday that targeted Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, this is Blinken's 10th trip to the Middle East since the start of the war in Gaza nearly a year ago. Earlier, Blinken met with the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and is due to hold a press conference with the foreign minister shortly. We'll be covering that live for you as soon as it happens. In the meantime, we're going to talk a bit more with our international affairs editor, Doug Herbert, who joins me on the set. Doug, let's start with the diplomacy aspect of this conflict. What really can Antony Blinken do at this point?
Very little, because, look, diplomacy has already been, peace diplomacy, that is, has been looking very dim and dimmer almost by the day. Intractable negotiations. We just saw on Monday, we saw a senior advisor to the U.S. President Joe Biden. His name is Amos Hochstein. He was basically in Israel. He was urging both Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, and other high-level Israeli officials, urging them to steer clear, to pull out all stops, to avoid an escalation with Lebanon. This has been high on the U.S. radar of major concerns, that this spillover, this much-feared spillover that we have incessantly been talking about, when is it going to happen, the escalation? You could argue it's already here. You have also had, Lloyd Austin, the U.S. Defense Secretary, and Israel's Defense Secretary, Yoav Gallant, who some Israeli media reports say is now in the crosshairs of Netanyahu and could perhaps even lose his post in a shakeup. But both of these men, the U.S. and the Israeli defense ministers, basically warning that time is running out for a negotiated settlement with Hezbollah on Israel's northern border. And alongside that, we have what you just reported, what we heard in those package, the explicit statements by Israel, its intentions to step up, to ramp up its military campaign with the express objective of returning thousands of Israeli civilians who have been displaced, uprooted from their homes in the north of Israel, uprooted by the tit-for-tat missile and drone skirmishing along that blue line border between the two countries, the UN-drawn blue line. It wants to return those civilians. So you have a recipe. Everything is in place for more tension, for stoking the tensions that are already there, and for escalation. Let's use the word again. I know how tired we all are of hearing this day after day. Is this the escalation? We're in the escalatory phase. We're in the sort of inevitable retaliation phase. So U.S. Diplomatic peace hopes right now are already sort of dashed. Israel's made it very clear. While Netanyahu says he respects and appreciates the Biden administration, Israel has to ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to do what it feels it has to do to defend its interests.
Doug, Israel has not claimed responsibility. Obviously, a lot of fingers are pointing at Israel at the moment. I mean, tell us a bit more about that and how it might continue in this war.
There's really not that much to tell, Jeannie, other than that yes, you're right. Israel in its military are officially not commenting on the incident. How many times in recent weeks, months, years have we said that in respect to these types of incidents where Palestinian or Hamas leaders or Hezbollah leaders are picked off, suddenly disappear in all sorts of incidents, you might call them, and there's no official comment from Israeli officials until perhaps there is at some point. Look, when I say this bears all the hallmarks, the way these explosions, it seems, from eyewitnesses on the scene, the way they happened, the injuries they caused, this wasn't some sort of low grade. It was using low tech, but the actual explosive technology was not low grade. It would have taken quite a sophisticated sabotage chain. And that is what, some U.S. Israeli experts and officials are saying privately, off the record, not publicly, not explicitly. Israeli media reports saying that really the way they see it, of course, it's Mossad, right? You've seen in recent years going back to the 90s, 1996, 1997, Hamas leaders picked off from Israel, usually denied, not acknowledged at the time by Israel. It's part of Israel's military campaign to basically, this is explicit, to destroy Hamas's ability to be a politically or militarily viable entity. That is an explicit Israeli statement. What isn't explicit is their acknowledgement of these types of things. Years ago, I think 15 years ago, a poison was injected into the ear of some top-level Hamas operative. And only when Jordan's kings sort of, drew a line in the sand and basically said, give an antidote to that poison, or else did Israel sort of apparently, reportedly at the time, step in, give the antidote, the guy survived. But you have this time and again. Is it? Is there 0.1% chance it's not Israel? Sure. But in the eyes of almost any security or intelligence official on off the record right now, and Israeli journalists who cover this, it's obviously Israel. And it's also obviously part of the Israeli strategy to have this so-called public ambiguity about it. Hit, but don't acknowledge the strike.